Good morning, gardeners. Today is August 8th and I'm out here getting started with some of my seed planting for the fall. I mostly was going to just start tomatoes and peppers today, but I decided I will start a few squash and cucumbers as well, just to show you the process. So this is one way. This is what I do. You don't have to do it this way. There are other ways of doing it. The first thing I will mention is that I just get these little containers and I fill them with a potting mix, which is like this. It's light and fluffy. It's mostly peat based and it has perlite in it. That's what the little white pieces are. And it's a good mix for starting things in a container because it's not too heavy. It has good drainage. But it holds the right amount of moisture. So I actually made this mix myself because it's cheaper that way, but it's also a pain. So I'll put links in the description to some of the ones you can buy at like Home Depot or Lowe's or one of your local nurseries. They carry potting mixes that are just fine for starting seeds. And if I was just starting out, I would just use one of those. Okay, so one thing I did, and I kind of learned this the hard way, I pre-moistened this soil. I already got it wet, and it's pretty well saturated. The reason I do that is because when I plant the seeds and then water, the water kind of rises up to the top, and peat doesn't hold water very well at first. When it's dry, it's kind of almost powdery, and it actually kind of repels water at first until it's soaked, and then after it's gotten wet, then it holds the water. But at first, it almost like wants to come out of the container and doesn't just sink in right away. So it makes the seeds that you just planted rise to the top in like a little puddle, and they kind of just go off to the side and like not really where you wanted them. So I pre-moistened the soil, and then what I do is I like to use a toothpick, but I have used all kinds of things. I've used a pen cap, a stick, a pen, whatever I have on hand. Sometimes a little plastic spoon, like the end of it is good. So what I'm going to do is just like get the dirt kind of loosened up, sort of like I'm tilling it or something, but on a tiny scale. So I get it all like fluffed up and like that, and there's lots of air spaces in there. Then I take my seed. This is pepper seeds, it's jalapeno. I don't use all of them. I just use 2 or 3. It depends on if my seeds are brand new and I think they're gonna have good germination, then I'll just use a couple. If my seeds are old or for some reason they're like a hard to germinate type of seed, then I might use a lot more, like maybe like 5 or 6, or it sort of depends on the seed too. Like if it's teeny tiny seeds like oregano or something, I might just sprinkle a bunch on the top. But these, as you can see the size, they're pretty small, and these are fairly new. Actually, I might go ahead and plant one more because I've had these seeds for a couple of years and they may be a little harder to germinate. So I'll put 3 in here. So when I drop them in, they kind of just fall. Sometimes they fall like into these little holes, and sometimes they sit on the surface. So once they're there, I kind of like push them down with the toothpick into the little holes and cover them up just lightly. These are small seeds, so they don't need to be very deep, just lightly covered with the soil like that. And one thing I should mention is that when you do that, sometimes the seed gets stuck on the wet soil on the toothpick, and you have to be careful to kind of check and make sure that didn't happen, and make sure you wipe it off into the right container if you did get it stuck on there, because what'll happen is you could end up going to the next container planting the next type of seed, and it accidentally gets planted in a different pot that has a different label, and now you're growing something that you didn't realize. That's how sometimes they get mixed up, and you think you planted one thing, but actually it's something else, and it pops up and you're like, wait, this is not what I thought it was. What is this? And sometimes that's because you're accidentally planting the wrong seeds and in the wrong containers. So I have these little plant labels I'm using to mark what they are. So a lot of times I like to just use a Sharpie and write on it, this is a jalapeno. And then I use tape to cover it up because the Sharpie often just kind of washes off in the rain after a while, and then I can't read what it says. So I cover it up with the tape, and that helps it to stay on there better. You can also, on some types, you can use a pencil, but not all of them. It depends on what kind of plant labels you've got. Sometimes you can't write on it with a pencil. So, and it's also a little harder to see when you do it with a pencil. Like, it doesn't stand out as much, and you have to really get up close to it, which sometimes when it's in the garden, you really have to like get in there to see it. So anyway, so I've already planted a bunch of tomato seeds, and I'm now moving on to some pepper seeds. And normally, well, I was gonna just wait a few more weeks to plant my squash and zucchini and cucumbers, but since I'm doing a video, I thought I would go ahead and just plant a few in containers. And usually I like to plant my squash and zucchini and cucumbers directly in either the ground or the pot that I'm going to be growing them in, because they grow really fast, and within just like 3 weeks or 4 weeks, the roots will be growing out of the bottom of this, and they'll be big and like falling over, and you'll need to get them transplanted pretty fast. Tomatoes and peppers take a lot longer to grow, so that's one reason I usually give them a little bit of a head start and start them before everything else, but it doesn't really matter. You know, I've done it both ways. I've done it in pots, I've done it in the ground, you know, direct sown, and sometimes I start them all at the same time, sometimes I stagger them. So if you're ready to put your squash and zucchini and cucumbers in the ground or in their final home, if you're going to be ready pretty soon, then it's okay to go ahead and start your seeds in pots if you want to. If you just, or if you need a few weeks to get, that's what I need right now. I need a few weeks to get the ground ready for where I'm going to put these. Right now, the area I'm going to use is covered in weeds, so I need a little bit of a head start. So that will give me a few weeks of them growing in pots before I transplant them out. But I will need to get on that pretty quickly and make sure I get them transplanted in just a few weeks. So, so for right now, I'm just going to plant a few of the squash and zucchini that I'm going to grow for the season. It's actually still very hot and very buggy, and the bugs are especially bad on those types of crops. Those squash and cucumbers just get destroyed by these little pickle worms and melon worms, and they are still just rampant right now this time of year. It's still going to be hot for another 2 months, and those bugs are just, they're terrible. So it's also very hot, and they're prone to getting like fungal diseases and like powdery mildew and those sorts of things on their leaves. So for right now, I'm only going to plant some hybrid varieties that are a little more resistant to the heat and the diseases, and the pests are just something that you pretty much have to either pick them off every day or be willing to spray some kind of, I use an organic pesticide sometimes, but so this is Summer Dance Hybrid Cucumber. I'm going to go ahead and plant that one now. It's supposed to be pretty easy to grow in the summer. Well, I won't say easy, but easier than some of the other heirlooms that I grow. This is Tigris hybrid zucchini. I'm gonna plant this one because it's bred more for the south and our hot conditions. And then this is a hybrid yellow squash. If you want to look here, these are the ones I will grow later in the season once it cools off a little bit. These are heirlooms, and they can't take the heat and the humidity and the fungus and everything as well as some of the hybrids can, but I really like them. So this muncher variety of cucumber, I really like the flavor, but it doesn't grow very well here. It needs it's like high maintenance and needs a lot of help and attention to get it to grow here. But Marketmore 76, this one grows pretty well, but it is an heirloom, so it's not always disease resistant. This soya or shoyo long, it's a Japanese variety, and it actually does grow pretty well even in the heat, so it should be okay. And then this is like my favorite squash. It's a huge squash. It's hard to tell in the picture, but they get enormous. And this one grows like a big vine, and it grows well in our climate, and it's really good squash, and they're really big. I like them a lot. Black Beauty zucchini and Coco Zell is my favorite zucchini. I like the flavor a lot, and it's kind of striped like this one. You can't tell in this picture, but it has stripes, and it looks sort of like this. This is Costada Romanesco. I actually don't like this one as much. I mostly just put it here because the picture is kind of similar to what the Coco Zell looks like. I actually think the Coco Zell tastes better, but this one grows pretty well here too, and it is also a very big variety. They get really huge fruits on them. So I'll wait a few weeks before I plant any of these, and when I plant these, I'll probably just plant them straight in the ground or in the containers that I'm going to grow them in. They get really big, so most of these I don't grow in containers. Most of these I put in the ground. I do have an earth box that I grow some of them in, and that will work for like one to go in one earth box. But anyway, I'm going to wait till it cools off a little more before I plant any of those. I just wanted to show you which ones I like. So I'm going to go ahead and plant a couple of these so you can see. Cucumbers and squash that grows so fast needs to go in a bigger container. So I'm going to put, same thing as I said before, these are fresh new seeds, so I'm just going to do 2. And I've already kind of gotten the soil fluffed up on this one, so I can just drop them in. And since these are slightly bigger seeds, you can push them down a little further. It sort of depends on the seed that you're planting for how far you need to put them into the dirt. Some seeds need light to germinate, and you just put them on top of the soil. Other seeds need to be covered. Other seeds need total darkness. These, I just kind of lightly cover them so you can't see them anymore. I made this for that, and I'm going to go ahead and plant this Tigris zucchini. So again, these are bigger seeds than the little tomato and pepper seeds. So I'll push them down a little further in the soil. You can see how like light and easy it is for me to move this soil around. That's what you want. You don't want heavy compacted soil in a pot. And I didn't make a tag for that yet. Okay, so I'm going to keep going with these. One thing I want to mention is just about the pots and where I get them, just in case anybody's wondering. All of these pots I got on Amazon, and I think I'll put a little review of some of the different pots I've tried in the description below this video, because I've tried a lot of different ones. And so, like, for example, this one I bought from Amazon, you can see it's very flimsy. It's like almost like not much stronger than like a thick paper. And this is the same kind in a smaller pot, and they easily get crushed like this. So I am not a big fan of these. I probably won't buy them again. They were very cheap though, and they do work. So, I mean, if you're looking for cheap, this is probably the way to go, and you don't feel bad if they get broken and you just throw them away. But I have bought some other ones that are stronger, like the ones I'm using now. These little ones are, they're not flimsy, they're a lot stronger. In fact, it was really easy to just scoop the potting soil right up into here with these little ones, because they're sturdy enough. And with these, if I try to do that, they like crumble. You see how I have to do that, and it just doesn't work very well. So not that you have to put soil in that way. You can certainly use a trowel and, you know, put it in with that, but it was easier to just scoop it out if you can. This was another brand that I've bought that I liked. It's a little more expensive, but it's stronger, and I've reused these pots already quite a few times. This is the same brand in a bigger pot and very sturdy. I can reuse them. This is just like your standard nursery pot. I think this is the size 1, or they call it like the 1 gallon, even though technically you can see it is not actually a full gallon, but that's just what they call it. So this is what I use for bigger things. I mean, I have planted zucchini and cucumbers in ones this size before, but just because they're so flimsy, I don't really want to plant something. Cucumbers and squash are kind of hard to transplant. You have to be really careful with their roots that they don't get hurt. They don't transplant very well. They don't like their roots being disturbed. So I didn't want something that is going to get caught while I'm trying to transplant it and the roots get stuck or something. Although if that happened, what I would do is I would just cut with scissors this pot away around the roots to get it out. But it slides out easier in a pot like this that you can really hold on to. So I'll put some descriptions, or I'll put some information about what pots I use in the description, just so you know. So I'm going to start these tomato and pepper seeds indoors under my little grow light setup that I have inside, and I'll show you that next. But I want to mention that you don't have to do that. I used to only start tomato and pepper seeds indoors in January for my spring crop because it was too cold in January and we would get freezes and frosts and stuff like that. But I always used to start my fall crop outside because it's warm enough. You know, they will grow fine outside right now. The problem is just all of the torrential rains that we get, and the insects are really bad still, and it's just so hot that they suffer and they need constant water, and you have to put them kind of in a shadier spot. So I did a test one year, and I tried to grow some of my tomato seeds inside under the light, and I put half of them outside, kind of in a shady spot under a tree, and just compared which ones did better. Like, I planted them all at the same time. Well, the ones that I started inside were way healthier and like grew better, and they were further along when it was time to transplant. The ones that were outside, they had just been through a lot. They had been pummeled by rain. They were kind of like thin and like a little bit leggy because they were under a tree and they weren't getting enough light. But then again, you can't really move them out into the full sun right away because then it's too much sun for a little baby seedling and they can get fried. So I've just ever since decided that it's easier for me, since I already have the setup inside, to just grow my tomatoes inside, because they take a few weeks, 4 to 6 weeks of growing them before they're ready to be transplanted. So for me, it's easier, just I turn on the light when I go to work in the morning, and I don't have to check on them all day. It doesn't matter if we have a tropical storm come through while I'm at work or something. I don't have to, you know, take the trays inside, or, you know, try to protect them from the rain, and I don't have to worry about them getting flooded or drying out. You know, I can check that, you know, at night, and then just turn off the light and go to bed. It's not any work really once I have them set up inside. But if you don't have an indoor setup, you don't have to do that. It's just, it's a way I like to do it. Now that I know it's just easier for me, and I just feel like it grows healthier seedlings. But the squash and zucchini and cucumbers, I am going to go ahead and put these outside. So I'll show you if I'm growing outside, what kind of an area I would plant, or not plant, but put my seedlings in the containers when they're small and they're just getting started. I'll show you the outdoor areas that are kind of best for that. And then I'll show you my indoor setup that I'm going to use for these. I'm also going to use the indoor setup for when I start my cool season crops, like my kale and my collards and lettuce and broccoli and all those cool season things. I'm going to start those in about a month, and I'll start those inside because it's really still too hot for them outside this time of year. So I'll start them also inside. And so yeah. Oh, and I'm going to be planting beans pretty soon, but beans I just direct sow right into the garden. So I don't start those inside. I don't start them in pots. I just plant them right in the ground when I'm ready to grow them. So I think that's all I wanted to tell you about this out here. So we'll go inside and look at the little grow lights that I have set up inside. And then I'll take you outside and show you where I'm going to put these plants until they get big enough. Oh, one other thing I'll mention is that in 4 to 6 weeks, these little tomatoes and peppers are going to be ready to transplant. And they can either be transplanted into what's called potted up. So I would move them to a pot that's this size and plant them pretty deep into this pot. Or I could go ahead and plant them in their bigger containers, that is where they're going to be growing, which I usually grow them in 7-gallon grow bags, or if I'm going to grow them in the ground, then they would go in the ground. So it just depends on different things, like what I have going on. Do I have the space ready? Am I going to give someone some? So like I'm going to put a few of these in bigger pots to give to my sister, and the rest of them I'll probably go ahead and put in my 7-gallon grow bags, unless they're not ready yet. If I'm running behind getting those ready, then I will go ahead and plant them in here. But it's an extra step, so I usually like to just go ahead and have everything ready to go so I can plant it in their final home, and just have to do it one time. But tomatoes and peppers actually like being transplanted like that, unlike the zucchini and squash that don't like to have their roots messed with. Tomatoes actually like to go from like a little pot to a bigger one, so it'll be fine either way. So, and I guess that's it. Okay, so this is my indoor little setup. I just have this is about 4 feet long or wide, and this table is actually a sewing table that I was storing for my sister, and it's just in the corner of a room, so it was actually like the perfect size. This is just made out of PVC pipe, and my dad helped me make it. I kind of just used a plan from another YouTube video I saw that someone had. I'll post a link to his video. He didn't really give detailed instructions on how to do it, but just, it's fairly straightforward. You know, you just need the elbows and the T's, and this has got the 4-way. I don't know much about it. My dad helped me. So, but yeah, you can cheaply and pretty easily build something like this from PVC pipe. And then it just has these little hook screw things. So it's got a hook hanging from this so that I can move the chains up and down, and This is just a cheap, like regular fluorescent shop light. It's not an expensive grow light. It has 4 fluorescent bulbs in there. And when I first got it, I was using 2 bulbs that were like the warm spectrum and 2 that were the cool spectrum, because I just figured it would be more well-rounded that way, like they would get different spectrums of light that way. Now I think I have just the ones that are like the natural light bulbs that are supposed to be more like natural light. They didn't have those when I first made this, so, but now that they have them, that's what I'm using. And then the main thing to say about this is just that when you first when the seedlings first pop up, I'm going to put this down as far as I can. It actually could go down a little bit more till they're like almost right on top of the seedling. The light is almost right on top of the seedlings. I'm trying not to let the little plastic or vinyl or whatever they are plant labels get to where they're touching the actual light bulbs, but I'm trying to get the light as close to the seedlings as I possibly can. They really need a lot of light, or if they have to reach for the light, then they will get leggy, and that's not good. You want their stem to be thick and strong, and if they reach for the light, then the stems are weak and small and fragile, and they just fall over. So that's why you want to make sure they have plenty of light so they don't have to reach for it. Then once they start to grow, I can move this up little by little so that they're not hitting the bulbs as they're growing. And then, obviously once they're even bigger, I can move this up even more. I've had it like way up here before when they grow. I don't plan to keep these in here a really long time. I mean, I'm going to transplant them outside in probably like 4 weeks. But they do grow really fast under this light. So I probably will end up with it like up at least that high, maybe higher. So that's all I really wanted to show you and tell you about this. It wasn't that expensive to make. It's not anything special that's like a specific grow light for plants. So, but it works as long as you keep the light close to it. And yeah, I turn it off at night and turn it on first thing in the morning. Just pretty much let it be on for most of the day, and it's good. So if you're growing your seedlings outside, then there are several options. One option to keep them pretty protected is to grow them on a covered porch. So this is where I have them right now, just to show you. I actually have, this is a little papaya plant and another pepper plant that I started a few months ago that I actually forgot about, that have been on my porch. This is on the southwest corner of this porch. So right now it's about 2:30 in the afternoon, and the sun is right about there behind a cloud. So this gets southern exposure all day. That's the southern part of this porch right there. So the sun comes in here, and it does kind of come in a little bit to the plants, but it's not really direct sunlight. So it's getting enough light, I think, because it's on the south side. If this was on the north side, I don't know if it would be enough sun. It probably wouldn't. But since it's the southwest, and also the sun does come in from the west in the afternoons as well, so it gets pretty much all day indirect sun here on the porch, and it's being protected, of course, by the roof from any rain. So this is one option, and I have grown some seedlings out here before, and sometimes I move them further out here to where they're in full sun, and then move them back when I'm trying to get them used to full sun. Kind of take them out a little bit at a time. If you have a lot of seedlings though, that could be a problem. There have been a few times where I've had this porch totally covered with seedlings and it was hard to even walk through. So that's kind of annoying, but you do what you gotta do sometimes. So anyway, this is probably actually not where I'm going to leave these for now. I'll show you where I'm gonna put these, but I wanted to just show you that this is an option. If this is what you have at your house, then it would work. But preferably with a southern facing porch, or a porch where it's covered but you can get the southern sun coming in all day. So that's option one. So option two is on a little shelf like this, which is actually where I'm probably going to leave these for now. I don't put anything on the top shelf because this is, again, this is the southern part of my house. It's very bright, very hot over here. So I leave this top part with nothing on it, but it acts like kind of a little roof so that you can see that the filtered sunlight is coming through. So the plants are getting some sun, but it's not really full sun. And I think it also helps to block some of the rain. So if we got a really intense downpour, then the water would be dispersed a little bit. I think it still does come down pretty hard though, because these are actually some fairly big openings here. So I don't know that it would protect them too much from heavy rain. Actually, if I wanted to give them a little more shade and a little more protection, I could put them down on the third shelf down. So it's got two shelves above it protecting it. And sometimes I've got this full of seedlings, so both sections, or all three sections sometimes are full of seedlings, but right now I don't have a whole lot out here, so I can kind of pick and choose where I want to put these. Those are some little turmeric plants growing in the background that I saved some little roots to give away to some friends. But anyway, this is option two. I like this little shelf to put seedlings on, and it does give some protection. I suppose you could put something on top to give it even more protection, like maybe some shade cloth or something like that. And shade cloth was actually option three that I was also going to mention. I don't have any shade cloth up right now to show you, but I do use it a lot to protect seedlings and cool season crops when it's still too hot for them. So I usually use about like 30 or 40% shade cloth. I think for this I would probably use a 40%, like slightly higher level of shade cloth. I think some people probably even use 50% shade cloth, but I've never used that high of shade because the seedlings do need some light, but they just don't need such intense summer sunlight all day. They get fried. So shade cloth is one way to start a bunch of seedlings under shade cloth, and I think it slightly protects them from the rain too, because when it comes down so hard it hits the shade cloth and then it kind of filters through the little holes before it hits the plants. So definitely shade cloth is one option for starting seedlings outside. And then the final option I will show you, if you have none of these things, if you have no porch, no shade cloth, no little shelves, then you probably have a tree. So I'm going to see if I can find a good shade tree that would work for starting seedlings under. So here is a little shade tree that's on the south side of our property. This is all southern exposure, southern sky. The sun comes through here all day long. It's a big open field, and then this little tree is here, and the tree is filtering the sunlight, so you can see on the ground all around the little tree there's plenty of spaces to put seedlings, and it's giving a good amount of sunlight, so it's not too intense, but it's still getting sunlight. I did make the mistake in the past of picking a shade tree that was too shady, and the seedlings didn't get enough sun and they got leggy because they were reaching for the sun, and that wasn't so great. The other nice thing about trees is that they're not only filtering the sun, but they give some protection from the rain, because of course a heavy rain would hit the leaves and the branches before it hits the plants, so it would slow it down a little bit. They could still get pounded by a really heavy storm, and of course the really heavy storms also blow the rain in sideways, so it's not going to catch everything, but certainly better than nothing. So yeah, a little tree like this giving dappled light all day, especially on a southern exposure side of the property, or in a open cleared area that's getting a lot of light coming through. This could be a pretty ideal place to start seedlings outdoors if you don't have shade cloth or a porch or something like that. And then I also did put a little, if I was going to leave them out here, which I'm not going to, but if I was, I would leave them in a little tray like that, so that they'd have a little bit more water before they totally dried out. That would help them catch some water, but it's also helping so that the grass doesn't grow all into the bottom of the pots. And one of the kind of bad things about having them outside, just like out in the field like this, is that the grass and the weeds are just all around them, and the weed seeds easily blow into the tops of the containers. So that's something to be mindful of. Anytime I've grown seedlings outside, I definitely have more problems with weeds getting into my little pots, and you do have to pull those weeds out. The sooner the better when you see them getting into the pots, because then they compete with your little seedlings for the nutrients, and they can easily take over and steal all the nutrients from your little baby seedlings. So this probably would not be my first choice, but it's not a bad choice. If this is all you have, is just some nice little shade trees on your property, then by all means you could start seedlings outside under a little shade tree in some dappled light. So I'm sure there's other options I haven't thought of for starting seedlings outside, but these are the main methods that I have used and that come to mind when I think about growing them outside. So just wanted to put a few ideas out there. The main things being just to have filtered sun, but plenty of sun all day, and protection from heavy rain, and just being able to check on them regularly so they don't dry out too much, making sure they get enough water but not flooded. So those are the main things. And then if you care to keep watching to know what varieties of tomatoes and peppers I planted, I will show a short clip of what I planted. I have all my seed packages spread out so I can show you what they are. So and I guess that's it. Thanks for watching. These are the tomato seeds I'm getting ready to plant for this season. Costada Romanesco from Baker Creek. I remember that was one of the best tasting varieties that I've planted in the past, so I'm gonna give it another try this season. This will be my second time growing that one. This cherry Roma tomato is so far my favorite cherry type tomato that I've tried. It's from Seed Savers Exchange, and it's a little more like a grape tomato than a cherry tomato, but I really like the flavor. Martino's Roma is one that I really like. I've grown it quite a few seasons now, and it's so far probably my favorite Roma tomato, also from Seed Savers Exchange. And the German pink tomato, this will be my second time trying to grow it. The first time I never got to try the fruit. Something killed the plant before it was big enough to produce. So we'll try that again. And then from Tomato Fest, I'm trying Paul Robeson, Prudence Purple, Santorini. I've tried that one before. It's a really good tasting tomato. So this will be my second time growing that one. Greek Domata, Greek Rose, regular rose. And this is an open pollinated version of the big beef tomato. I'm also going to be trying the hybrid version of the big beef tomato from Tomato Growers Supply Company. Growing a bunch from Tomato Growers Supply. Beef Master, I tried that one last season, and it was probably the healthiest plant of all of the ones I grew last season, and it had a good tasty fruit, so I will definitely be growing that one again. First Prize, I grew that one last season, and it was a pretty good flavor and also pretty disease resistant. The Precious Pink Hybrid was not as disease resistant, but it tasted really good. This Stupus, I guess is how you say it. I'm going to start that one for my sister. She really liked the flavor of those big cherry tomatoes that I grew last season. I probably won't grow it again because all of the fruits were like misshapen and had cat facing really bad. But it tasted good, and it actually grew really well. Even though the fruits didn't look very good, they actually did taste good. So my sister liked it, so I'll grow that one again for her. And these are some I have not tried yet. San Marzano, Opalka, Elfin, which is a cherry tomato, or actually it's a grape tomato, and Marmande VF. So some of these have some disease resistance, like the VF and the VFN. So all of these letters mean that it's bred to be resistant against certain types of diseases and problems. So some of these are hybrids, and they tend to grow better than the heirlooms. But I also have a thing for heirlooms. I love growing heirlooms that I can save the seed and they'll grow true to seed. So I'm trying all of these, and I'll compare them at the end of the season. So these are the pepper seeds I'm getting ready to plant, and a lot of these are actually paprika. So this one's Alma Paprika from Seed Savers Exchange. I've grown that one a lot. I really like it. It has a good flavor. This is Hungarian Paprika from Southern Exposure Seed Exchange. And this is another Hungarian paprika from a different place called Bunny Hop Seeds. I've only got a couple left of these, and they don't germinate very easily, or at least they didn't from this package. I had a hard time getting them to germinate, so I don't even know if those two will germinate, but I kind of thought that these tasted better than these did, so I'm just gonna try to grow them both in case I don't get any germination from these. And then all of these are from a company called Refining Fire Chilies. It doesn't say on the package, but these were all varieties of paprika, and they grew well last season, and I liked the flavor of them, so I'll be growing them again. I can't really pronounce, I don't know how to pronounce it. This is a Spanish paprika, I guess it's Bola. This one's Capia, I think it's a Hungarian paprika, and this Kalaksa is another Hungarian paprika. This is, I guess, Nora or Nora's. This one actually came from Spain, from this company called spicegarden.eu. So it's a Spanish paprika, and I ordered it from Spain. But actually, I got 0 germination from these last season. So I'm just gonna try again, but I'm not holding my breath. I actually think, just based on what these look like in the picture, that these Bola ones, which are also supposed to be a Spanish paprika, they looked just like that. So I think probably this is probably that. So hopefully they are the same, because this one germinated and grew just fine for me. So if that one doesn't germinate, then oh well. I actually did get another kind of paprika from this company in Spain called La Vera, and it did germinate, but I already have some growing, so I don't need to start more. I did get some decent seeds from that company, and I haven't tried them yet though. And then this one's Ancho from Seed Savers Exchange. This one's Osilio Thin Skin Italian from Seed Savers Exchange. This one is probably my favorite sweet pepper. It has a little bit of spiciness, but just a hint of spiciness. It's kind of sweet. I really like the flavor of this one. That's like probably my favorite. And this Jimmy Nardello pepper is my second favorite sweet pepper. I don't know. These two are my favorites. They rival each other. And then this is Greek pepperoncini pepper from Burpee Seeds. I had mistakenly got the Italian pepperoncini pepper once before, and it wasn't what I was expecting. I wanted this one, which is a little bit hotter. It has a little bit of kick to it. The Italian one that I got by mistake did not have that slight heat to it. Also, not pictured here, I have some jalapeno seeds that I'm going to start also, but I need to get those from my sister before I plant these. So yeah, that's what I'm getting ready to plant.